When we think of the greatest tragedy in the history of knowledge, one image comes to mind: the Great Library of Alexandria, burning in a single catastrophic fire. We imagine all the secrets of the ancient world: lost plays, forgotten science, entire histories, all turned to ash in one terrible night. But what if that story, the one we all know, is a comforting lie? What if the truth is far more sinister, not because of a fire, but because there was no single fire to blame? The real story is not about how the library was destroyed, but how we let it die. Chapter 1. The seductive myth of a single flame. The popular story is simple and dramatic. In 48 BCE, Julius Caesar, caught in a naval battle, set fire to enemy ships. The flames leaped ashore, and the world's greatest center of learning was accidentally consumed. This narrative gives us a clear villain and a single moment of loss. It's a tragedy we can easily comprehend, a historical scar left by the carelessness of a powerful man. We mourn the lost scrolls, imagining a world where ancient science could have propelled us centuries ahead. It's a clean, simple story. But history is rarely clean and almost never simple. Chapter 2. Death by a Thousand Cuts. The Library of Alexandria did not die in a blaze of glory. It suffered a slow, agonizing death that lasted for over 400 years. Its enemies were not flames, but something far more common: human nature. First came the budget cuts, as later kings saw less value in funding scholars than soldiers. Then came the purges, as intellectuals were exiled for having the wrong political opinions. Parts of the collection were moved to Rome, not as treasures to be shared, but as spoils of war. Later, religious fanaticism took hold. Mobs, convinced they were cleansing the world of pagan heresy, burned temples and scrolls. The library wasn't a single building, but a sprawling campus. It didn't burn, it was dismantled, piece by piece, idea, by generations who grew to fear what it contained. It wasn't murdered, it starved to death from neglect and was picked apart by zealots. Chapter 3. The Ghosts of Lost Knowledge. So, was all that knowledge truly lost? Not entirely. The ghost of the library is not what was burned, but what was scattered. Many of its most important texts had been copied and translated for centuries. Arab and Persian scholars became the new custodians of this knowledge, preserving Greek mathematics, medicine, and philosophy while Europe entered the Dark Ages. What we call the Renaissance was simply Europe rediscovering the knowledge that Alexandria had once held, now returned through translators and scholars from Baghdad and Cordoba. The real tragedy was the loss of the idea of the library, a universal institution where the world's knowledge was collected not for one nation or one religion, but for all of humanity. We didn't lose the books, we lost the dream. Conclusion. The fire we should truly fear. So why do we cling to the myth of the Great Fire? Because it's easier to blame a single man in the distant past than to confront the real lesson. It's easier to mourn a sudden blaze than to admit that knowledge can be extinguished by indifference, intolerance, and political division, forces that are still very much alive today. The story of Alexandria is a warning. The greatest threat to knowledge is not one big, dramatic fire. It is the slow, creeping decay of apathy. It is the quiet decision that books are not as important as borders, that curiosity is more dangerous than dogma, and that some ideas are too challenging to be allowed to exist. The fire to fear is not the one that burns buildings, but the one that extinguishes the desire to learn in the first place.